The finale to season 1 of the HBO Max original crime drama Tokyo Vice is now here, and this has been quite the ride. We've been given engaging human drama, an intriguing mystery, some double crosses, and a look into the world where no one is truly what or who they seem. Okay, so this is going to have spoilers from the previous episodes, but I will keep it spoiler-free for the review of the finale. In episodes 6 and 7, there was an impromptu Yakuza peace summit that ended up having Tozawa having to humble himself and beg for forgiveness. Sam was beginning to settle her debts with Matsuo, which then seemed to be permanently settled after Sato's visit with Matsuo. We also watched Jake chase down a tip from Chihari Kai, which would cripple Tozawa's drug trafficking scheme if it was successful. But because it wasn't, Jake struggles to regain his footing after the botched raid, and we see Sam then grow increasingly desperate to find Polina. Finally, Sato is feeling the pressure of his elevated standing in Chihari Kai. Alright, so this is the finale. As of this recording, a second season has not been announced by HBO Max. Because of the traction and popularity this has been gaining, though, I think it is safe to assume that a second season is going to be coming, but there's still no guarantee, which then leads me to my feelings on how this finale plays out. There are a ton of unanswered storylines, and then a couple of portions that absolutely leave us wondering about characters. The good thing about this is that it speaks to how invested I became with certain characters. I'm so engaged with them, and that anything left unresolved seems like agony. And there were a couple of times in this episode where I was shocked by what happens, and then mad when the credits rolled. This continues to be acted wonderfully. There's a scene between Ken Watanabe's Katagiri and Hideki Ito's Miyamoto. It is quiet and patient as a conversation that takes place while they're on a fishing dock. Now, there's nothing flashy that's going on in this scene, and there's not huge action, just a conversation. The power and intensity that is demonstrated between the two is awesome. When we follow Sam, she gets to have a few emotional sequences as well, where we can feel her mental anguish. She's still searching for Polina, and she's getting progressively more concerned as each day passes. But I love that in this, she never loses her street smarts. She may be distraught, but she's not dumb. Although I do begin to question one of her actions because it arises more out of a desperation really than anything. So Sato has been my favorite character in this show, especially as we get to watch him grow deeper into the Yakuza, but regret it more and more as he goes along. That internal struggle is very compelling, and in this finale, he's beginning to feel even more of the pressure to be who they think he should be. There are some powerful scenes that put us into his head, and although the brief glimpses, so much is communicated in those short scenes. And as much as I don't want his character arc to go in the way that it seems to be going, it's still very compelling, and it shows me how well the story is executed to invest me so much into that character. Now, while this show isn't very heavy on the action, when there are action scenes, they tend to be very exciting. And there was one in this episode that was pretty intense due to the close quarter struggles. And thankfully, most of the action isn't all cut up to hide the lack of fight choreography. I mean, here we mostly get to see the chaotic mess of a fight in a very small space, and the camera doesn't cut away too often, allowing us to feel that chaos. There are some very defining decisions that are made by characters in the finale that either have or maybe will have lasting and dramatic consequences. And while a lot of the actions feel disappointing on a personal level because we just want differently for a character, for the story it makes sense and it complements the narrative really well. So as much as I really love this show, my biggest complaint as this finale closes out is that it just feels very incomplete. It feels like we're either missing a couple of episodes or that this is just part 1 of the story. And if that's the case, I'm totally on board. I would love to have another 8 episodes of dramatic and engulfing storytelling surrounding these characters. My biggest worry is that the second season hasn't been announced yet, leaving us to wonder how it's all going to play out. So overall, Tokyo Vice is an amazing and enveloping show that showcases the beauty of Japan while also highlighting the dangerous underworld that seemingly lurks everywhere. The acting for this series has been phenomenal, creating characters that are layered and complex, with some being sympathetic and others despicable. But for each of the main players, I was never just ambivalent on them, which speaks to the writing and the acting. The mystery became intriguing, drawing me in slowly but deliberately with diverging and intersecting storylines designed to pull us in more as each minute passes. And while I really enjoyed the series as a whole, I'm not overly satisfied with how the finale concludes. The episode was powerful and captivating, with a lot of suspense and even anxiety, but without confirmation that we'll get to find out the rest of the story in a second season, I watched the credits roll with my jaw just hanging in disbelief. There's sex, a little bit of nudity, a lot of profanity, and a ton of violence. I give season 1 of Tokyo Vice 4.5 out of 5 couches. So what was a favorite storyline or maybe scene in this series for you? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.